Hey, what is up, guys? I hope you're all having an amazing day. And Sony just finished up with their live stream event, released the release date for the PlayStation 5, as well as the price point, or rather, announced the release date and price point. So I want to talk a bit about it, especially how it will compare to the Xbox Series X and the Series S, because obviously these are two competing consoles. Console wars are going to be pretty serious this generation, if you ask me, so it's definitely worth talking about. Let me first start off by saying bravo to Sony, because that $400 price point for the PlayStation 5 all digital is a very good price point. I talked previously about how the Xbox Series S is a great price point for $300, and I still feel that way, but I really did not think that Sony could be able to, or would be able to, pull off a $400 price point on a PlayStation 5. They must be taking a loss on it. I really do think that, because the truth is, these consoles, both of them, the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, are incredibly powerful. And to get those consoles at the price point that they're at right now, it's pretty darn good. Obviously, with the original, or excuse me, the regular PlayStation 5, the one with the disc drive, you're looking at the same price point as the Xbox Series X, $499 on both of them. But very surprisingly, with the all digital version of the PlayStation 5, it drops down $100. I was really expecting it to drop down $50, but $100, that's kind of insane. That's a pretty good bargain there, because even though you drop a disc drive, which I think is more important than people lead on, but at the same time, it's not necessarily that important either. A ton of people are moving to all digital games as is. I know a lot of people who just do not buy physical media anymore. They're basically doing all digital games, all digital movies, all digital music, which has been kind of a thing forever now, it feels like. So it just seems like the all digital versions of both consoles really can shine at this moment. One of the problems with the Xbox One S all digital was that the Xbox One S was already cheap enough. As a matter of fact, when it released actually, the all digital version, that is, it was the same price as the Xbox One, so it made no sense to go with the all digital version at all. So the Xbox One S really isn't a good example of how successful an all digital console can be. And with that being said, though, I really do feel like that was Microsoft trying to test the waters and get a feel for the market on how they would handle an all digital version. Obviously, it didn't go so well, but I think Microsoft realized that regardless of that, they can put those savings on a lower end console and sell a lower end console, or the next generations of consoles, at a lower price that would really bring in a lot of customers. I really do feel that if it wasn't for the fact that Microsoft is, or will be, releasing the consoles at such a low price point for both the Xbox Series X and the Series S, we wouldn't see the PlayStation 5 at the price point that it is currently at. I would call the PlayStation 5 regular version, I would say that it's pretty reasonable to suggest that it was always going to be targeting a $500 price point. I just don't think that Sony would really push it higher than that. They tried that with the PlayStation 3 and it really bit them in the ass. So I think Sony's smart enough to not go for that $600 price point, and understanding that $500 and $400 are kind of those two key areas where you can kind of get away with launching a pretty premium console. But that $400 PlayStation 5 all digital, I really do not think that it would have been that cheap if it wasn't for the fact that Microsoft is releasing a Series S at $299. I mean, I really feel that they are probably only going to drop the price by $50 and launch the all digital version at $450. But because of how good this generation is in terms of pricing for the consumer, after Xbox or Microsoft announced the price point on the Xboxes, it really forced Sony's hand to drop the prices, or at least on the all digital version, in my opinion. Obviously, I don't have any insider knowledge, so I couldn't guarantee that, but I really don't see it being any other way. Sony is a little bit of a different company than Microsoft. They're not nearly as rich, they're not worth as much, and Microsoft can kind of afford more to take a loss on consoles than Sony can. But with that being said, both Sony and Microsoft obviously are a business, and they are looking for a profit. So even though both companies are probably taking a loss on their consoles, The truth is that they make that money up in games. I mean, they take a portion of every video game sell, so they're making plenty of bank. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the console business in the first place. So I think both Sony and Xbox, or excuse me, Microsoft, are definitely kind of doing the same strategy, trying to get these consoles out at a price point that will be not only make the most sense for the consumers, but be really aggressive for getting market share. I think both of these companies really realize that whoever wins in the beginning gets that snowball effect and starts to win towards the end. And it takes a lot of hard work and a bit of luck to kind of be that company that started off in either second or last place, whatever the heck it might be, just essentially not first place, and be able to pull off a first place run, which Sony was able to do at the very end of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 generation. Both companies have really learned a lot from their previous endeavors into console generations. Sony, as I kind of talked about before, released a PlayStation 3 not only a year later than the Xbox 360, which was kind of Microsoft just pushing a console out as fast as they can, but and that bit them in the ass too, because Microsoft had the Red Ring of Death problem, which was a huge issue. But not only was Sony releasing a console a year later, it wasn't even as powerful as the Xbox 360, and on top of that, it was ridiculously more expensive, $600. And I say expensive, but the truth is that was probably a normal price point for Sony to try and make money off the console, or at least sell it at a cost. Because the truth is that the way consoles kind of work nowadays, as we already talked about 1,000 times, they're sold at a loss. And they make up their money on the other end with game sales and all the portions and unlicensing fees that they get to take a pie out of from everybody, pretty much. So, yeah, they make their money in the long run, but console sales is not where they make their money on. But sales numbers are important because it means that there's more people in their ecosystem to make that money for them in the long run. So Sony at $600 and a year later really started off on a bad start for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 console generation. However, Microsoft started to focus more and more on Kinect, which was originally actually well received, but it seemed like they were kind of losing track of the focus on games, and Sony was doubling down on games, and that's how they really pushed themselves to be the number one selling console at the end of those generations. So both companies did extremely well. But going into the PS4 and Xbox One generation, they were pretty tied up if you really look at it that way. So when Microsoft announced a weaker console, at least on paper, weaker console at a higher price point, Sony really had a lot going for them. And that's what they both realize now. Microsoft is coming in at an extremely low price point, as well as Sony too. Extremely competitive price point on both of their consoles, including the Series S and Series X for Microsoft, and obviously the two consoles for the Sony PlayStation 5. So both of them being very aggressively priced. They understand that not only is pricing incredibly important, but also having a product out there that can be unique enough to have a good reason to buy it. The big reason to buy an Xbox Series S is because it is cheaper and you have access to Game Pass, obviously in Xbox's or Microsoft's ecosystem. With the Xbox Series X, the big selling point is it's the more powerful console, and again, you do get access to Game Pass. With Sony PlayStation 5, both the all digital and the regular edition, the big selling point there is going to be the exclusive games. Sony is kind of built up a good reputation of having great exclusive games, although judging from their the live event they just had today, it seems like a lot of their exclusives currently are actually going to be just timed exclusives or console exclusives. Nothing like that's going to be completely unique to the console, except some games like obviously God of War. For the most part, I don't think that they would bring God of War onto PC. God of War 2, that is, on the PC whenever it releases, which hasn't even been announced yet. Or Spider-Man, obviously. Spider-Man is a huge selling point for Sony consoles. So the exclusives on Sony PlayStations are a big selling point for them, which everybody kind of already knows at this point. Also, it has the largest market share from the previous generation or current generation, however you want to look at it, the PS4 and Xbox One generation. They have the most market share. There's more people out there with a PS4. So Microsoft really has to make up ground because of that. And that's something they've been able to do in the past with the Xbox 360. The PS2 was the most like widely sold console I think of all time, and the Xbox 360 pretty much almost beat out the PlayStation 3 in terms of sales. So they can do it. They really can, and they have a good thing going for them in both terms of performance and price point on both of their consoles. Because even the Xbox Series S is targeting 1440p at up to 120 frames per second, which is a great performance target for that price range. So I already talked a bit about how the big selling point for the PlayStation 5 is the exclusives as well as the large market share. So a ton of people already own a PS4 and are in that ecosystem and are more likely to jump to a PlayStation 5 than an Xbox for the most part, because most times people stay with the brand that they know and have had good experience with. Obviously, that's not always the case. There is probably a large number of Xbox users who switched to the PlayStation when the PS4 was really beating out the Xbox One in the early beginnings of the current generation. And obviously, Xbox stopped giving out sales numbers not too long ago. So, well, actually, a good while ago. So we can't really talk too much about how well it's doing, but it's still obviously going to be incredibly likely that the PS4 is outselling the Xbox even now. So, yes, I know I've said it so like 1,000 times, but the other point I was trying to make here and trying to get into, and I kind of got rambled or kind of went off track and started rambling on, is that the PS4 All Digital is a great price point. So that is another big selling point for PlayStation. Obviously, that's also a selling point for the Xbox. For the same price that you can get a PS5 with a disc drive, you can get a more powerful Xbox console. And then for a lower price than anything that Sony has to offer, you can get a lower end Xbox console. But the PS5 All Digital at $400 is a 10 teraflop beast that is at that price point, which is a great price point for that console. Microsoft really needs to look out and try and plan around this, because the truth is that even the difference between 10 to 12 teraflops isn't tremendously huge. And there's other things that really make the Xbox console more powerful than the PlayStation 5 console, so that's not the only thing. Teraflops is not the only number that matters. As a matter of fact, teraflops for the most part doesn't really matter that much. More specifically when comparing two different GPU architectures, however, these both are going to be running on RDNA 2, so it does matter at least a decent amount. But there's a lot going for the Xbox Series X, which makes it a more powerful console. However, the big thing is that the PlayStation 5 is still an incredibly powerful console, and a lot of people are going to see that, especially when benchmarks comes out for the two consoles. So when those two go head to head, if Xbox isn't really crushing the PlayStation, I wouldn't even say crushing, rather just not significantly beating it out for frames or stability or resolution, whatever it may be, depending on the game title. If it's not significantly, God, I cannot talk, beating out the PlayStation 5, then there's going to be a lot of Sony fans who are going to be, well, not incentivized to jump over, because the gains of getting the more powerful console wouldn't really seem gainful enough. Is that the right way to say it? I hope that that made sense. But either way, remember that the Xbox brand is currently the underdog, if you really want to look at it that way, because PlayStation definitely won this generation, so Xbox has ground to make up. And that even though they have a more powerful console, power is not everything. It is a important factor, but not the only factor. Games is obviously another one. However, I would say that Microsoft is definitely focusing on games with obviously things like Xbox Game Pass, and also the massive amount of studios they've just been acquiring over the years, and the likelihood of seeing many console exclusive titles coming to the Xbox Series X, which will be more important in the future for them selling consoles, strictly because those games are just not ready yet. So that's why it's going to be kind of more important in the future rather than right now. But with all that being said, I think both of these consoles have an amazing chance of just like, how do I put it? Just bare knuckle brawling. I think both of these guys are going to sell pretty evenly. I really think that instead of seeing one just absolutely dominate the other, I think we're probably going to see, unless like something serious happens here, like, I don't know, the PS5 has stability issues and maybe overheats or something like that, and that comes out whenever the benchmarks and the release date is upon us and all that. If anything crazy like that happens, then maybe sales numbers would be different. But I think we're going to see pretty similar sales numbers, at least for the first year of these consoles. So I really want to share my thoughts on this and talk a bit more about it. I want to get more into it in a later video, just talking about the importance of Xbox's sales strategy as well as Sony's sales strategy, which I kind of touched on here. But I think it goes even deeper. For instance, for Xbox, it's not just a matter of winning a console war, it's a matter of getting devices into your home, which is one of the biggest reasons why Microsoft decided to make, or at least got the approval to make, an Xbox console in the first place. So with all that said and done, guys, I really want to thank you for sticking around and watching this video. I hope that I was able to make a video that you were able to enjoy, because I really want to kind of focus on making better content, and right now I just don't have the time to focus too much on like editing or anything like that. I work ridiculous amount of hours for someone who is already a full-time student. I take that back, because I know there's people. I work still part-time. I work, probably close to 40 hours a week, but not full-time yet. So, and I am a full-time college student though, and I know there are people who do both full-time. So I know there's other people out there who are hurting more than me. But man, I will tell you, my schedule lately has been insane, and I haven't had a lot of free time. So even making this video is kind of taking like a big chunk out of my time right now. So I hope that you enjoyed it. And I hope that everything I said makes sense, because I have a pretty good history of just screwing up my words, either by not being able to talk right, because as you guys can probably tell in my videos, I mess up a lot of words and a lot of sentences, or just rambling on forever and maybe missing the point. However, I don't plan to change that, because I like to ramble a lot. So hopefully you just enjoy my rambling or whatnot. But anyways, guys, I really again want to thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you guys have an amazing day and are staying safe and healthy out there, and I will see you all later.